Welcome to Interactive Storytelling. We are continuing our tour to the various forms of interactive storytelling. This time, I will guide you to the world of interactive cinema and interactive television. As I mentioned before, these tours are not comprehensive, and there are many works that could have been included here. Rather than aiming for completeness, I'm trying to show the diversity of approaches that has been taken. So, sit back and enjoy this showreel of films and shows. The movie Mr. Sardonicus, directed by William Castle and released in 1961, could be taken as our first candidate for an interactive movie. The gimmick of the movie is a punishment ball. Each viewer in the audience received a card with a thumb printed on it. Before the final reel of the film, the audience could vote whether the terrible main character of the film, Mr. Sardonicus, is pardoned or not by showing either thumb up or thumb down. Although this seems like a way to include the audience, it was actually a gimmick, because the counting of the votes was pre-filmed and the tallied votes always decided that Mr. Sardonicus should be punished. Only the reel with the punishment was ever made and shown in the cinemas. Although this counts as a false start, the idea of including the audience to make a selection was realized a few years later. Raduc Cintera's Quinoa automat is considered to be the first interactive movie. It was originally made for the Czechoslovak pavilion at the Expo 67 in Montreal. During the film, the action stops at 9 points and the moderator asks the audience to choose between two scenes. This voting was carried out in the Expo movie theater, where each seat was prepared with two buttons, one green, the other red. The scene with more votes was shown next. Structurally, each of the choices leads back to the same point, where the selection for the next scene happens. This means that basically there exist two parallel movies which have the same beginning. At each choice point, the audience can choose which of the movies they want to watch next, almost like changing a channel. Technically, the theater had two projectors running in parallel, and the result of the vote decided which projector got blocked out by placing a cap on its lens. The introduction of Laserdisc in 1978 allowed to reduce the work involved in cumbersome film reels. Instead, it was now possible to jump at any point of the film almost instantaneously. The MIT Machine Architecture Group demonstrated this already in 1978 with the Aspen movie map. Here, the interactor could explore the town of Aspen, Colorado via a touchscreen interface and a Laserdisc. The MIT Media Lab's Interactive Cinema Research Group, led by Gloriana Davenport, continued the research work by experimenting with polylinear storytelling and reconfigurable video. Apart from normal film releases, Laserdisc was also used to publish games. A company called Videx released two discs, Murder Anyone in 1982 and Many Roads to Murder in 1983, which allowed the viewer to act in the role of a detective solving a murder case. The story was played by real actors. The interactive features of the Laserdisc allowed the viewer to look at the evidence or solve the crime. Each disc featured 16 different plot lines. These Laserdisc releases were meant for home viewing. However, Laserdiscs seem to provide also an answer for realizing interactive cinema in the theater surroundings. Bob Bejan's I'm Your Man from 1992 is a short film projected from a Laserdisc in a specially equipped movie theater, which has seat-mounted joysticks with 3 choices. There are 6 selection points during the film, where the story can divert based on how the majority of the audience selects using their joysticks. Bejan used also the same technology in the film Ride for Your Life from 1995, where the protagonist engages in a bicycle race to avoid an alien invasion, and the audience has to make choices on his behalf every 10 seconds. Although these movies were intended to be showcases for new technology, both the projection system and the joysticks turn out to be too costly to gain wider popularity. Laserdisc never delivered the promise of interactive cinema, but other emerging technologies tried to fill the void. One of these technologies was the Internet, and especially the World Wide Web. David Blair's film Wax, or The Discovery of Television Among the Bees, released in 1991, was a harbinger of both. It was the first movie streamed over the Internet in 1993. The next year, 1994, it appeared in a website called WaxWeb, where it was cut into 80,000 pieces that could be put together freely. The visitors of WaxWeb could view the sequences in the order based on their choices along the story. Another technology was the digital versatile disc, or DVD, released in 1996. Just like Laserdisc before, it offered a possibility to create interactive films, where the viewer could choose the next scene. David Wheeler's Tender Loving Care, released in 1998, plays an episode of the story, after which the viewer is asked a series of questions of what they have seen. The viewer can also examine the protagonist's house and find out further details related to the story. In Morten Schøt's Switching from 2003, the viewer can jump back and forth in time and place. The offered story world is cyclic, as it keeps repeating itself without an end. Late Fragment by Darrell Cloran, Anita Doron and Matteo Kuetz, released in 2007, is a feature-length film where the viewer can click to change the scene or to follow a character and see the events from different points of view. These are just 3 examples out of many. As a summary, most of the interactive DVDs are mainly studies into the possibilities of interactive film, but none of them was really a breakthrough that would have reached the interest of a larger audience. Before we finish our tour in interactive cinema, let's take a few examples of non-interactive films that are still relevant to understanding interactive cinema, and also interactive storytelling. Krzysztof Kieslowski's Blind Chance from 1981 has 3 storylines about a medical student who has lost his call after the death of his father. While running after a train at a station platform, the outcome of each alternative story depends on how he reacts to obstacles on the way. In the first storyline, he manages to pass a fellow drinking at the platform and catches the train. There, he meets a member of the Communist Party and, in the end, decides to join the party. In the second storyline, he bumps into the drinking fellow, but does not stop. This time, he misses the train, but hits a railroad car and is arrested. In the end, he decides to join the anti-communist resistance. In the third storyline, he almost hits the drinking fellow, apologizes, misses the train, but does not hit the guard. He then returns back to medical school and stays out of politics altogether. At the end of the film, the protagonist is going to a conference and meets people from the first two storylines at the airport. They all board the same airplane and, well, I won't spoil the ending. Kieslowski's movie inspired two less complex but more popular versions. In Peter Hewitt's Sliding Doors from 1998, the protagonist misses a train in an underground station in the first storyline, whereas in the second she catches the train. This leads to two alternative stories presented to the viewer. In Tom Tyckwer's Run Lola Run, also from 1998, the protagonist goes through three alternative storylines depending on how she reacts to a dog in a staircase. The last two films I'm going to mention are highly relevant to the topic of this course. The films are Harold Ramis's Groundhog Day from 1993 and Mark Forster's Stranger Than Fiction from 2006. If you haven't seen these films, please watch them as soon as possible. I will refer to them a few times during this course. To summarize, Groundhog Day tells us the story of a weatherman who relives the same day over and over. Stranger Than Fiction tells the story of an IRS agent who starts hearing a voiceover narrating his daily life. That's all I'm going to say about them. Let's leave the big screen behind and focus next on the small screen. Although the television transmission doesn't technically support interactivity, there are two ways how it's been used to create interactive television. The first possibility is to use multiple channels for transmitting the interactive story and allowing the viewer to choose their viewpoint by changing the channel. Oliver Hirschspiegel's Mörderische Entscheidung, or Murderous Decisions from 1991, is an example of this approach. It is a crime story that was originally transmitted simultaneously on two German TV channels, ARD and ZDF. The idea is that the viewer can zap between the two channels to see the events from the perspective of one of the two main characters. Similar approach was taken by the Danish production Dead Ark from 2000. It extends the story to 4 channels, each showing simultaneously their own 70-minute movie about a bank robbery that takes place on the New Year's Eve of the millennium. Again, the viewer can change their viewpoint by changing the channel. The second approach is to use one television channel but allow the viewers to influence the program by other means of communication, such as telephone. Teijo Pellinen's Aquario from 2000 broadcast nightly over 4 weeks in the Finnish channel Yle Yksi. It starred 2 insomniac neighbors, Ari and Eira. The audience could call on and vote from 4 impulses that would affect how the characters behave. The impulses to choose from could be, for instance, eat, drink, work, or daydream. Technically, Aquario was based on a collection of about 5,000 video clips that could be shown in the program. Each week had an overall theme that allowed the story to progress, getting to know the characters realizing their hearing voices from the neighbor, discovery of a hole on the wall, and curiosity about the neighbor turning into an interest. At the show's final, Eira drops a scented note on Ari's mailbox as Ari opens the door, and the characters meet one another for the first time. The traditional television broadcasting doesn't allow much interactivity. The video streaming services are much better suited for this. Interactive web series paved the way for having interactive television shows. For example, Netflix pioneered the genre first in animation shows like DreamWorks' Puss in Book, Trapped in an Epic Tale, and Buddy Thunderstruck, both released in 2017. Netflix's game changer, however, was an interactive episode of the series Black Mirror called Bandersnatch, released in 2018. It was written by the series creator Charlie Brooker, and it basically adapted the mechanics used in gamebooks or hypertext fiction into a television show. The viewer has, from time to time, a possibility to choose from two alternatives that take the story to different directions. After Black Mirror Bandersnatch, Netflix has offered interactive episodes for other series too. Also, other video streaming services such as HBO and YouTube Originals have released interactive television shows. But at the moment of making this video, there aren't really any signs that interactive television is going to make a big breakthrough. The consensus seems to be that however interesting the concept is, it still feels lacking. One reason for this lukewarm response could be that interactive television, as well as interactive cinema, is trying to be something that already exists and is doing very well. Something that manages to combine interactivity and storytelling. And that something is video games. In the next video, we will do our last plunge into the history of interactive storytelling and see how video games have managed to do this. Or have they? See you there.